What if I told you that being a guest on one podcast could result in months of social media content? Sounds too good to be true, right? Well, in today's episode, I'm sharing how to repurpose content from your podcast guest appearances. Whether you've been on one podcast or 20, I'm going to show you how to squeeze every ounce of value from those interviews to boost your personal brand and attract qualified candidates. I'm covering everything from identifying your most impactful talking points to avoiding the mistakes that can make your repurposed content fall flat. Plus, I'll share my favorite tools that make this process so simple, you'll wonder why you haven't been doing it all along. So if you're ready to turn your occasional podcast appearances into a content goldmine, stick around. Let's start with the big picture. So I get this a lot, and people ask me, why is repurposing content from podcast appearances important? And for us in HR and TA, like I've said, we're always really busy. We're always juggling a ton of stuff. So increasing your reach, extending your content's lifespan, and like establishing yourself as an expert are important for us. And doing it from podcast appearances is really the easiest way. It also helps you come up with more content ideas. I shared a clip recently from a podcast that I was a guest on, and from the questions in the comments, they gave me ideas for my next series of podcast episodes, literally all from sharing one clip. So it really helps the engagement, helps extend your reach, helps you come up with new ideas. Plus, you're helping the podcast host by sharing the podcast episode over and over again as many times as you can. So now that we understand why it's important to repurpose your content, let's talk about really how to do it, right? I think one of the most important things is figuring out what parts of your podcast episode to share or are the most valuable for your audience. And the thing is, you should know your audience, right? You shouldn't have even been on a podcast that covered a topic that wouldn't resonate with your audience. So that's the first thing. Know your audience. And if you get the questions ahead of time from the host, you can read through them, and if there's anything that really isn't aligned with what you talk about, what's important to your target audience, then you can, or even things that don't align with your brand, don't be ashamed to contact the host and ask them, let's talk about this in a different angle, or suggest a different question. Look, podcast interviews are supposed to be mutually beneficial. And even on this podcast, I've had guests that I've sent them a topic that I want to cover, and they're like, well, maybe we could cover it this way because this isn't really something that I'm comfortable talking about. And that's totally fine. Really, most hosts are going to be okay with that. Now, if you don't have the questions ahead of time, or if it's something that comes up that isn't aligned with your brand and your audience, try your best to answer it in a way that will align. Now, that being said, if most of your interview is aligned with the topics that you usually talk about, then choosing the parts of the interview that are most valuable to your audience is going to be pretty easy. You can actually share video clips or audiograms from the episode with your audience to test out which topics resonate the most with them. Trust me, you're going to know pretty quickly if a topic is one that your audience is interested in or not. Engagement metrics are your best friend. And I've talked about this in some of my guests in many episodes about testing and teasing out your content before creating like the full-blown content. I think it was Taylor Desson in our episode, and I'll link to it, where he spoke about how he tests out his topics and his content ideas on Twitter. And if they do good, then he goes to LinkedIn, and then he creates a video. So you can do the same thing. Just tease out the topics from like little short clips from the podcast interview and see how your audience reacts to it. And then you can go deeper into repurposing and expanding on that topic in other mediums. That leads me to talk about something that people always ask, because yeah, it's easy to repurpose content by doing little clips or sharing audiograms or pulling out a quote, but you can be so creative with this. There's different types of content that you can create from a single podcast interview. You can create a blog post. You can, if you have an email newsletter, you can write an email newsletter about one of the topics and expand on it. When repurposing, it's important to know, like, you don't have to limit yourself to sharing exactly the exact clip or the exact thing that you said during that interview. You can always expand more. That's really the beauty of repurposing content, and you can say the same thing in different ways. Some of the creative ways that I've done it without feeling repetitive is, let's say I was on a podcast. Like I said, I created that. I was on that podcast. It was my podcast on the I Hate It Here podcast with Hiba Yusuf. I shared one of the clips. In the comments, there was interesting discussion, and people were like, well, I want to know more about this. Well, now I have a full podcast series that I'm going to do to talk about that specific question that came up in the comments. I've also done things where from one clip, now I can create a short form video, totally different, but talking about the same topic. So really, repurposing is like, you don't have to limit yourself to resharing the exact same thing. And don't be afraid to be repetitive. That's also something that I've spoken about in previous episodes with other guests. I think it was Joel Lalji that really harped on repeating yourself. First of all, when you share a piece of content, 100% of your followers don't see that piece of content. Really, it's very few of them that see it. And even the ones that have seen it, you have to say things over and over again for it to really land and resonate with your audience. I think there's some statistic about people have to see things 6 to 7 times before really it landing and remembering. So don't be afraid to be repetitive. People always ask me, like, how often should you share repurposed content from a single podcast appearance? I try to repurpose my content at least every 3 to 6 months. So I use a tool created by Jay Klaus called Creator HQ. Then I use that to plan all of my content. And in there, it tells you, like, it has a repurposing calendar that shows you 3, 6, and 12 months later, like, hey, this is the content that you posted 3 months ago. Now you can repurpose it. And sometimes I share the exact same thing. Sometimes I tweak the hook or change the call to action. Bam, you've got a post in a few seconds. So that's really what I'm talking about when I'm talking about repurposing the content. Doesn't mean sharing the exact same thing, but just changing 1 or 2 things. Bam, you've got new content. So now let's get really deep into the tools that I use for repurposing content. And if you're listening to this one, please be sure to check out the video version of this podcast on YouTube, because I'm going to be sharing my screen and showing how I use the tools step by step. But obviously, you can also follow along here on the audio version as well. So one of my favorite tools is really AI. ChatGPT, Claude, AI are really good. And what I do is I feed it the transcript from the podcast interview and then tell it to, one, recommend what type of topics I can talk about from that to repurpose. So let me show you how I repurpose content from a podcast episode that I've been a guest on using AI. So here is the prompt. I recently appeared as a guest on a podcast discussing, and then I'll include the main topic. In this case, the main topic was the real reason why new hires don't stick around. So we were talking a lot about retention. So I add that there. And then the target audience for my content. And here I describe my target audience. My target audience are TA professionals, employer branders, anyone looking to learn how to attract, engage, and retain qualified talent. So let me paste that here. My primary platform. So then I let Claude know what my primary platforms are, which are LinkedIn, YouTube, my podcast, and Twitter. This will change depending on what your platforms are. So then it says, based on the transcript provided, please suggest content ideas for each platform that align with my expertise and audience interest. So here we go. So here you see it tells me LinkedIn, you can do an article, you can do a poll, infographic, and it just gives me, it spits out the ideas I can use, right? So article, 5 strategies to ensure job descriptions match reality. That's something that we spoke about. A poll, what's the biggest reason for the gap between job descriptions and actual roles? Just things like that. And obviously, as I choose, I can ask Claude or just from my expertise to list out what I said. So for example, I could be like, okay, I'm going to write this article about the 5 strategies to ensure job descriptions match reality. I would ask it in this chat to tell me, okay, what did I mention in the episode? If I mention stuff in the episode, then I'll write that. If not, I can expand from my knowledge because I know about these things. So that's just one of the prompts that you can use there. You can always further refine the prompt and get it to do more of what you need. Now, if you're offering a specific service or if there's a specific call to action you're wanting your audience to take from this content, be sure to mention that to AI in your prompt, right? Say things like, hey, I offer this type of service and I want the content that I create to drive more leads or drive more conversations or whatever, so that Claude can know to incorporate that. By the way, I have a list of sample prompts that I'm going to share with you. The link is going to be in the show notes so that you can download it. And I, just like you saw there, I have the prompt and I have what to fill in your own things, and then you'll be able to see. So let's say I've done everything. I have my call to actions. I have everything that I want. I can also ask it for the repurposing strategy, right? So here's another prompt that I'm going to share. So I can say, can you suggest ways to repurpose the main points from the podcast into different content formats? For example, how could a key point be transformed into a tweet, a LinkedIn post, and a short video? And I'm doing this real time, so let's see what comes up here for this specific episode. Oh, it pulled out a great thing. So, and obviously I never am going to use exactly what AI spits out because it sounds very AI and it's very easy to say, but it prompts ideas for me and then I can quickly write the content. So here it says a tweet, recruiting tip, stop trying to appeal to everyone. Focus on your company's true differentiators and behaviors you reward. If you've ever heard me speak or seen any of my content, you know this is one of my big things that I'm talking about, not glazing over, not sugarcoating things and painting a rosy picture, but sharing the truth, because there's people that are okay with working wherever you work based on the reality. But when you share things that aren't true, then you're attracting the wrong people and it's going to hurt you and hurt your retention. So that's a lot of what I spoke in that episode. So it's good that it pulled that out as a tweet, right? And as a LinkedIn post, are you showcasing your company's true culture during your recruitment? And then something longer. And then let's see what script it came up with for short form video. AI isn't my favorite for scripting videos. It takes a lot of prompting to get to it, but it does work. Yeah, first thing is like, hey there, Rhona here. Let me talk about a common recruiting mistake. Pro tip, never start your videos with, hey, Rhona here, or hi, Rhona here. Like, no one cares. That's not a good hook. But anyhow, you get the idea. You can go through this, you can prompt it, and it can give you specific ideas of how to repurpose the content. And as you saw, repurposing isn't resharing. There is a difference, a slight difference in the content, but you use the base of what you already did as a podcast guest to create new content, and it minimizes a lot of the ideation time, which is what a lot of people spend most of their time on when it comes to creating content. And of course, you can always reshare. You just mix it in, reshare and repurpose, but you can get months and months of content from one podcast appearance. So I'm going to share another one of my tools, which is Opus Clip. I absolutely love Opus Clip. You can feed it a link from a YouTube video or Vimeo or StreamYard. It has quite a few links that Vimeo, Zoom, YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, Dropbox, and StreamYard. So here I have a link of my latest podcast episode, the one before this with Orlando Haynes. See, I dropped the link there and it picks it up what the video is. I want to use the clip basic, which is the basic one. It's the one that I want to use for this example. The other one's beta. They're testing. It's really good, but it's not the common one that I use, right? So I have a template already that I've created for my podcast where it has the watermark for my podcast. It has my colors and everything, but it does come loaded with preset templates. You can either, let's say, filter the topic. Like if you spoke about many different things during that episode, but you only want to create clips from one specific topic that you spoke about, you could even type it in here. You can add the keywords, comma separated. So let's say that I only wanted to clip content about mics to use, because we did speak about what microphones and like technology to use and how to make sure that you sound good on the episode. I could write that here. There's a specific part of the episode that you want to clip. Like usually when I clip these, I don't include the ending, the call to action, like the closing. And I know that at this point it was like 52:21 where the interview ended. So I'll just do this, and it just saves time because you buy amount of minutes per year, like you buy credits of minutes. So that like saves your minutes, and then you can choose the template, and then you click here on get clips in one click, right? So let's do it. And you'll see that it's thinking, it's doing this here. And I've done this before, so I'm going to go show you how the end product looks. Here it came up with, let's see how many clips, 29 impactful moments from that episode that I could share as clips. And then I can come in here and I can edit them. It shows you the transcript of what it clipped. You can edit, change the title. The editor is pretty easy to use. You can even add B-roll, emojis, remove any spaces or anything. You can reframe, like if it's not framed correctly, you can crop and frame things here pretty easily, and it applies to the entire clip and things like that. You can even add transitions, add text. It's really amazing, and they have great tutorials and great support. I'm also going to include a link. It is an affiliate link. You don't pay extra for it, but I might get a small percentage if you sign up from my affiliate link. This is something that would support this podcast, so I would really appreciate if you use my affiliate link to sign up. But yes, I'm going to link it there. Opus Clip is really easy. It takes a few minutes. You can choose the clips, you edit, I can save those changes, and you can export it, download it, and share it. You can even share directly from here. I don't, because I use other tools for scheduling my content, but you can absolutely schedule directly from Opus Clip to your social media channels and share it there. So those were 2 easy ways that I use to repurpose content. Like I said, I'm going to share all of the links for everything that I spoke about in the show notes. Some are affiliate links, others aren't. I'm also going to share the prompts that I use for AI to repurpose content. You can download it for free. I'm not charging for that. But I really hope you liked this short episode. If you are interested in repurposing or creating a month's worth of content and just spending an hour with me, click on the link that's also in the show notes. I have launched recently a service. It's called Level Up with Video, where it's like a podcast episode. So you fill out a questionnaire and I do all of the research for the topics that you talk about to your audience or that are of interest. I do the research. I come up with questions and hooks and prompts, and then you join me in a virtual recording room. I ask you the questions. I guide you through the process of how to deliver the lines on camera. 2 weeks later, you get a month's worth of professionally edited short social media clips, video clips that you can share on LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok. And it only took an hour of your time, and I do the rest. So if you want to learn more about that, go to throwouttheplaybook.com/video and you can schedule a call with me. No pressure. It's just a low-key call where I explain to you more about how the process works. And if it works out, we work together. If not, you leave the call with a few ideas of how to level up your content. The link is in the show notes. So thanks for listening, and I will chat with you next week.